You're listening to
My Québec City, 50 Plus Edition.
Hello, today I'm doing a podcast for My Québec City. My name is Luca, and I am a Sec 5 student from DDO School. We're currently in the DDO School music room, and I am here with Larry Hamilton. Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Larry Hamilton. I'm a resident of Shannon, Quebec, 68 years old. Family of wife and my 3 children, although my children now have left, so the nest is empty.
Okay.
I've been in Shannon for the large majority of my life, working in Quebec City.
So you came here, or like you earlier, you said that you were a student at DDO. Like, from what you've seen, has it changed?
It's not the same building at all. When I'm sitting here looking at all the instruments around me, we had our musical class consisted of a blackboard and the showing of notes. Our school was almost primitive compared to what you have to work with. It was that generation, or it was that time. Now I'm sure if I went into a classroom here, and are you allowed your phones in the classroom?
It depends what time. Usually when the teacher's doing a course, we're not allowed, except if it's for research purposes maybe things like that. They're gonna let us, but usually you're allowed like during the breaks and the lunchtime.
Yeah. It's got to be controlled to a certain degree. And do you have laptops in the classroom?
I have my personal laptop, but the school has laptops for schoolwork in case the teacher needs it.
Yeah.
So it has changed.
It has changed a lot. And needless to say, the whole focus on discipline has changed enormously. When I was at St. Patrick's, we had one of the administrative individuals that was in charge of discipline. That was his job.
Really?
Times have changed.
So after your high school, did you go to another school or did you go straight to your job?
I went to St. Lawrence College. I spent 3 years there in a business course. For various reasons, I didn't go on to university. Once I got my degree, I left, yes.
And you went to your pulp and paper
yes.
job?
Yeah, with the exception of I worked 2 months for another company. But
So while reading your bio, I saw something about your job. I saw you worked for over 42
years. Yeah.
So something must have there must have been funny moments or maybe interesting moments while working for that job.
There were. I guess it's certainly not a funny moment, but I did go through 2 bankruptcies, which were strenuous. One in the early 2000s and another one in 2012. Not necessarily because of the division that I worked for, but more from other entities that were incorporated in the same company. But it forced us into bankruptcy also. So it gave us a black mark. That was near the end of my career. The beginning of the career was the best days of all because newsprint at that time was a major communicator as opposed to laptops, which did not exist. We had accounting ledgers that weighed 30 pounds with all the entries in them. So we went from a time, I was hired to work for them in 1975, so it gives you an idea. And at that point in time, we were a major supplier of newsprint. And we went from that to when I retired, seeing most of our competitors simply fall by the wayside. The mills no longer exist. The one I work for, fortunately, does, but not without its hardships.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you have any more stories? I mean, working there for 42 years, there's got to be something that maybe marked you or something.
Well, I spent a good bit of time in 2 different departments, and I had the opportunity of working with those when I started at the lower ranks, who had jobs that were the less paying in the company. And at the end, I worked with a lot of people that were high in the company. You can never relate a person's, or at least not always, you can never relate a person's position in a company with their state of morality or their ability to be kind or their ability to be intelligent. A lot of times people who do a lesser job are thought on as being, well, they don't have the same level of education. They don't speak as well. But when you get to know them, they're as efficient as the next guy, regardless of where they are in the organization. The organogram of a company and where you fit in it does not necessarily judge as to what type of individual you are. So I learned that through working in different areas.
I heard that you were influenced by listening to Irish music while you were growing up. How did it influence yourself?
Well, it was a question, I guess, of exposure to that type of ethnic music as opposed to any other. In the 50s and 60s, when I was a child, the large majority of the population was of Irish descent. We had a population at that time of probably around 350 people. So it wasn't a very large community. The majority of them being Irish that would have settled in this area probably between 1842 and 1846. And the families continued on as they were farmers, so the farms were passed from generation to generation. It was not as big as it was back in the 19th century, but in my time it was still relatively large enough to have the population that it had for farming.
Do you like traveling?
I do, yes. Usually get to Germany every second year. My wife comes from Saskatchewan, so there's another trip out there once in a while. And so, yeah, we travel a fair amount. Fair amount.
Do you have stories about when you traveled? Do you have an experience when you were traveling?
Shortly after being married, 5, 6 years, 7 years, I guess, after that, we had 3 children. And we used to drive out to Saskatchewan. That was an immense challenge with the children. We always had some lovely experiences, short of murder. But they were exciting times. Germany, of course, is a whole other ball. Europe as such. I've got to visit a fair amount of Europe because my daughter, using her place as a central, we traveled in different areas, and she has the advantages of speaking English, French, and German. So that gives me sort of a carte blanche to go where I want with her beside me. We check out different countries, and we've stayed in some very nice places, met some very nice people. It's an experience. I mean, when you come from a small place like Shannon in the 60s, not like today where it's 20 times the population, you never think of, when I started here in DDO school in 1961, and we read about these countries in our geography books, and to be there, if someone would have told me that I would be visiting Germany or parts of Europe, I wouldn't have been completely surprised, but it was never something in my mind that I ever thought of experiencing.
So it's like a surprise, but you're happy to have experienced.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So good experiences. And it's been pushed to, I think eventually my wife and I would have visited other countries, but it's been pushed ahead in its timeline on account of my daughter being there since she's been 30 years old now. So 10 years, she's there 10 years, 11 years. But I would like to say that in general, I've had a very good life here in the surroundings here, whether it be in my residency in Shannon or my time in Quebec at school or my working career in Quebec City. It's all been good. So I have no regrets.
Okay. I'll thank you for being here, and I appreciate your time being here with me today.
Thank you very much.